Good morning. I'm Natalie. I would like to invite up some of my new friends and some old friends to the stage. Will our panelists please come on up? Gotta take my phone and chapstick and everything else that you shove in your pockets out. All right, so like I said, I'm Natalie. My core role here at Google is as our Women in Technology advocate. A little bit about myself is, so Megan Smith is a friend and a mentor. And back in 2013, I was working on Women Tech Makers as a 20% project with my friend Stephanie Liu, who's here. And basically, was going to I/O, and Women Tech Makers would really only happen the night before Google I/O. It was a way for us to galvanize and create community prior to our big technical conference. And basically, I was like, man, this can really happen more than once a day or once a year. And so I thought, how can we make this something that scales around the world and happens all the time? So I went to Megan, and I was like, Megan, I want this to be my full-time job. And so she went to Hiroshi, she went to Sundar, and those gentlemen said, yes, we will absolutely make this her full-time job. So I'm lucky enough that I got to take my passion project, my 20%, into a full-time job. And so now at Google, I create a program that helps to provide visibility, community, and resources for women around the world. And I'm incredibly thankful for my job. And I'm sure these other women also have incredible jobs that they want to tell you a little bit about. So we're going to go down the line. I'm going to have our awesome panelists say their name and a little bit about themselves and also what they're solving for.
So hi, I'm Kimberly, and I'm a mechanical engineer here at Google. I work on the self-driving car project, and I am solving for X, of course. But apart from that, I'm really passionate about the work we're doing with the self-driving car. I really feel like it's going to change our world for the better. For me personally, I have two aging grandmothers that really can't drive at night anymore, and I really believe that the self-driving car is going to give them back mobility and independence that they are losing as they age.
Awesome.
Hi everyone. I'm Nahid. I'm founder at Lighthouse. We make voice control solution for your daily devices, home devices. So my background is in hardware and electronics, and I love building tangible physical things. So my goal is to basically make everyday object work for you so that you don't spend time in daily chores, basically.
Hi, my name is Kate Sturr, and I'm an artist and prototyper at the Exploratorium. I work in both hardware prototyping and educational prototyping, so that means I do a lot of educational design and working on designing experiences as well as actually building and making things with my hands. What I would really like to solve for is creating a global culture that supports building confidence in young women so that they can choose whether they want to be artists or scientists or some combination thereof, and they feel like that is something that is open to them to decide for themselves.
My name is Gabriella Levine. I'm a hardware engineer at Google X. I'm on a team called Rapid Evaluation, and our goal is to prototype new possible moonshot solutions for Google X. And the type of work I do is hardware prototyping a lot with electronics and fabrication. And my passion is in robots that fly, that walk, that swim. And I've found a lot of sort of importance through communities that I've learned with, both online and in person, and shared collaboration makerspaces. So what I want to solve for is developing tools that could give people access for empowerment to build things that more efficiently create automation and environmental cleanup, but also considering design and experience.
No big deal, right? So a really cool side note, so Gabriella was also one of the I/O speakers that we had this past year for Women Tech Makers, and there's a great video online about her talk. I really recommend you check it out. So we're saying some words that maybe not everyone is familiar with. Can I hear a little bit from one or two of you? What is prototyping? Like, we've said that a couple different times.
I can answer that because I used it in 2 different contexts. And I think for me, prototyping is really kind of a mindset of try it, change it, try it again, where you're working through ideas quickly, but leaving room for reflection in between so that you can sort of, like the name of Gabriella's team at Google is Rapid Evaluation, and I think that's a big part of the ethos of prototyping is being able to quickly decide what's working, what's not working, and then to iterate on that and try the next step.
Yeah, it sounds about right. So when you're prototyping, can you tell what are the materials you're working with? So when I think of prototyping, I do paper prototyping a lot, or we call them low-res materials. It's a fancy name for construction paper, pipe cleaners. So I use a lot of low-res materials when I prototype. What kind of materials are you using to solve for the projects that you're working on?
Really all kinds of things. I know working on the self-driving car, a lot of my prototypes are about things users would work with. And so one of my first prototypes that I made when I was on the team was a cardboard box that I made a layout of buttons on and sat with a user. And I was like, how's this layout? And then changed it a bit. And so it can be things as simple as that, or things as robust as 3D printed materials or clay or any sort of thing like that.
So for me, prototyping is because of my background at Intel. So I first jumped into a microprocessor. So my initial stuffs were basically Arduino and a bunch of sensors, things like that. And over time, it kind of moved to like, OK, you have crazy wiring, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, or any other computer things you have in front. Now, how do you cover it? So then move to that, like 3D printing or like laser cutter, things like that I use regularly.
I guess for me, my ideal prototyping is similar to yours, where it's Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, wires, sensors, but often what I find might be quicker than just jumping to do the tools I love to use is actually to say, and this is more of sometimes specific to a certain application, to say, well, could I use, I don't know, paper or pipe cleaners or low-res materials to get a first pass to see if a product that I'm thinking about might even be valuable? So do something that might involve other people and actors and paper, if that could be done in 15 minutes, and then hopefully jump to the tools I love, which is hot glue and electronics.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a hot glue pro. I used to go to the Children's Discovery Museum a lot in San Jose when I was younger, and my mom would volunteer there. And so I feel like that was the beginning of my expert level glue gunning that I am now really good at. So I guess we're talking about rapid innovation, and I guess we're suggesting that prototyping leads to rapid innovation. What is your favorite project that you've ever worked on where you had a prototype that really landed and worked out and led to something really incredible?
I guess like I won't talk about my current project really, but other than that, like when I was pretty early in prototyping and building electronics, tangible physical products outside of my current work. That time I was involved with a STEM group. They were teaching high school girls how to make build projects with tools that were available at that time. So one of my favorite project is that like the goal was to teach girls, high school girls, in a workshop how to build a robot. So I was in a team which were basically like, okay, on the workshop day they will do this thing. So we first try it. What are the steps will be, and what are the things they need, what are the components they need, how do they need to wire, and what are the codes they need to write. So that was to build a robot car. So that I worked with a couple of other people. So that was a very interesting project.
I guess I also question, does rapid prototyping lead to rapid innovation at larger scale? Because I could do things very fast to prototype and get a first model out, but often I get stuck trying to scale. And that's something that I wonder, how could we bring the prototyping to scale. So to talk about one project, I'm passionate about prototyping, or that I started prototyping a snake robot because I was excited about snakes and organic motion through a sort of linear array of servo motors. Then I realized, okay, if I keep prototyping this, what if I share my designs and see if other people start to use this for, I don't know, for sharing back new code algorithms or other things that other people are doing. So that's one way that I think sort of using the internet to share designs and see what people all over the world might build and share back with you might be one way to actually lead this like quick cycle of prototyping to get to potentially scaled innovation.
So at some point, I want you to talk a little bit more about the robot, because Gabriella has a really excellent story about some things that didn't always go well, and maybe that leads into my next question, because it begs the question. So we have low-res materials, and we have these incredible projects that we work on, but things don't always go well, right? Like, I know that, like I said, I'm a glue gun master, but that doesn't mean that I don't burn myself from time to time. Thankfully, I haven't lost any fingers in the projects I've worked on. I'll say that one project that I'm especially proud of, it's not necessarily my day-to-day role, but it's the only time that I can claim that I'm a rocket scientist, was I built a 4-story hand-rolled aluminum rocket ship that you might have seen on the Embarcadero in San Francisco. And that is built with my art collective called 5 Ton Crane. And we built it to engage people in citizen science. And that went really well, right? But there was definitely some things that went wrong. Can you guys share a little bit about something that failed and that didn't work?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like 70% of the things I make fail, and that 30% is really where the money is. No, I mean, part of being an innovator or a prototyper or a maker is really having a thick skin, because what we do is, design, make, test, repeat. But that test part is, I think, often the most critical part, because you can design things, you can make it, but if you're not sharing it with users and getting their feedback, you're not going to be able to improve your designs. And so I think often, there's a pride aspect there where, you get really into this design, and you've worked really, really hard on it, but you give it to a user, and they're like, actually, I don't like this at all. And you're like, well, that's unfortunate. But as a prototyper, you have to be able to take that and take that design you just worked for hours and hours and hours on and just throw it away and start with something that is going to be better for the user. And really, I think checking your pride and then accepting that it's going to take several iterations to get to something that's great is really, really important. And to expect failure and to know that when your prototype fails, that doesn't mean you failed. It means that you have learned something, hopefully, from that iteration.
Yeah, that's a huge point. You're going to hear it, and it's not a Valley cliche, right? Like, fail fast, fail often, fail early. There are definitely projects I've worked on for women tech makers where I was so excited. We were working so hard on these projects, and they just didn't really land. They just didn't really work. And it's like a little piece of my heart fell on the floor. But you know what? It's cool. We're going to try something else. I learned something from that, and you move on, right? So I definitely, like I said, it's not really a Valley cliche. It's something that I think a lot of us want to live by, and we try to live by, and we encourage everyone else to fail. It's a good thing to fail. Any other good fail stories?
At the tinkering studio where I work at the Exploratorium, one of the things that we try to build into our activity design is opportunities to fail in a way that kind of builds you up. And so lately what we've been doing in the space is making Rube Goldberg machines or chain reactions. And so visitors of any age will come into the space and they'll create a series of things that happen one thing after another. Maybe a block falls and then a ball rolls down a ramp and hits a lever that causes a pulley to fall off the table and move a car. And so there's all of these moments along the way where something could go wrong. And as kids are working on these projects, they become very invested in making it succeed. but almost 100% of the time there's one element.
That'd be the best new Goldberg machine. If there's an elephant as a part of it, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, we have a squirrel actually. Anyway, it's a crazy place. But there is usually one element that's not going to work, and so that is this experience of like the try it, change it, try it again, prototyping over and over again within this very safe context of like it doesn't really matter whether your chain reaction works or not. It's the experience of having that iterative process that builds confidence and says like, well, I got this one section to work, and if I had like 5 more hours, I could probably get the rest to work. But I think that knowing your limitations and figuring out like what is possible within the context that I'm in right now, and evaluating yourself on that stage rather than zooming out and evaluating yourself in kind of a context that isn't right for what you're actually trying to accomplish in the moment. Is something that I really have experienced in my own life and that I'm trying to promote in visitors and learners at the Exploratorium.
I guess one thing I would say maybe like really, I mean, disaster doesn't have any condoms, right? So if something doesn't work, you know that it doesn't work. So it's kind of like you're crossing out one of the unknown unknowns. So you can try out like other paths. So one of my personal story I would share is not really related to prototyping, but like when probably I was like 6 years old, like I looked at sewing needle, and I was looking at an electric socket, and I really thought these two will fit really well, and I put that there.
No, but you learned something. Right, that's important.
That doesn't sound like a failure. It sounds like a science experiment.
Yeah. It's actually a really beautiful thing that I've brought up my mom already a couple of times. I remember one time a science experiment, I was supposed to be building a rhinoceros out of styrofoam and paper mache. And my mom thought that, well, I needed to take it to school the next day. And I wonder if she remembers this, but she stuck it in the oven because she thought that would make it dry faster. And it turned into just like a sad mess. And we had to rebuild it. It was a really nice thought. And, hey, Mom. So you mentioned, Kate, a little bit about being hard on yourself. I find that that's something that a lot of us as makers, as creators, as innovators, we're hard on ourselves, right? Like I think maybe even people around us are hard on us. And I think it's because we're perfectionists, but we just want to do an incredible job. And so I want to ask the panel, when you're hard on yourself and you realize that might be a barrier to you excelling and going forward, how do you counteract that? Or do you have people in your lives or a mantra or a method that helps you take off that baggage, take off that stuff, and just keep going?
Yeah, good.
Well, Gabriella and I were actually kind of talking about this before we came up on stage, and just thinking about like when you're not confident in yourself, how do you find that confidence? Does it come from someone else? I guess I'm kind of restating your question, but that's something I think about for myself a lot. And so for me, one thing that helps is to try to challenge myself in a different context and to kind of go through the things in my life that I am doing really well, or that I've taken on these other challenges, like maybe it's running a marathon or like climbing a challenging route at the climbing gym, or making like a fantastic gourmet meal or something, and like ticking off those successes and then reminding myself that I'm a much bigger person and fuller person than what I'm doing in my job. And so even if a prototype or some hardware is not mechanically working the way that I want it to, I think having those other successes in other parts of my life remind me that I have this sticking power and can really push through and accomplish things even when they're challenging.
Yeah, I definitely I've been at Google now for a little over a year, and when I joined the team, I was straight out of college, and I walked in my first day, found out we were making a car, which I didn't know previous to that.
Little project.
Just a small thing. And walked in and was like meeting the team, and I was the only female mechanical engineer, and still am, on the self-driving car team.
We'll fix that.
Yeah, we're working on it. And that was incredibly intimidating. I was in a room with, all of these really, really impressive engineers. People who have just really amazing backgrounds. Like, did you mean to hire me? Like, are you sure? And
that's a common thing at Google.
Yeah,
actually.
no,
people,
it is.
People will get their badge and you're like, you sure? Like, my name's really on the list. Like, it
Yeah.
happens, but you belong here.
Yeah, no, and Ani was talking, about how she was, felt miserable and really unqualified in a new team for like the first 6 months. And I feel like I had a really similar experience. And the way I really gained confidence was, similar to what Kate was saying, is just the challenging yourself and really getting more and more experience has really helped me build confidence and helped me to get feedback from my peers that I'm doing a good job, and that has definitely improved. But I definitely think in the beginning my confidence was an issue, and I'm really happy that it's improved since then. But I was very timid to take on those challenges in the beginning, but luckily it's not the case anymore.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Elena, she's a Googler. Wish she was here for you all to meet her. So we're going to be sharing her story on the Women Tech Makers YouTube channel in the next couple of days, and I'll tweet it out to you guys so you see it. And one of the coolest things about her talk is she actually has a Gmail filter. And so anytime anyone sends her anything like a thank you or great job on that project, she has an awesome folder. And so she just has every day, like if she's having a hard day, she goes to that filter, right? And she just sees all the praise, right? Because when you're having a hard day, when your shit is not going right, like your project is not working out, she has a whole set of emails that reminds her how great she is. And I actually have a gratitude journal that I write in all the time. And when I'm having a rough day, I go back over the past year and I just laugh. Like that one time when I saw like a humpback whale like spy hop and I got to like touch its nose, right? Like little things in life that remind you that you are not your work is something that you do. I'm thankful that I get to bring my passion into my work, but I can check out if I need to, and I think that's a really important part of like managing. I don't want to bring in too much of the work-life balance, but like managing some of that stress that can pop up in the work environment. So we have a few more minutes before I want to take some question and answers. A theme that I've seen pop up in some conversations today is around mentorship and people that brought you into wanting to be a prototyper or a maker. Can you share the people that inspired you so that the room can also be inspired by those people?
Yep, surely. Basically, the overall maker community, they were really welcoming. So that was really the inspiration. Like when I got started with prototyping, so that was one thing. And then I had a mentor when I was at Intel. I had a mentor. He was a VP at Intel Labs. So he was a great inspiration, giving me like all the tools he has in his home. Like, hey, you take it and do stuff. So that was great. That time. So.
We're all like nodding. Like first.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like when you join Google, you get assigned a mentor. But for me, my real mentors came from the people I was sitting around and the people I started working on projects with. I came in and a lot of people, were really overwhelmed with the work they had, and so I took on some of those projects, and those people became really natural mentors for me. And one of the people I really look up to the most in my team is Jamie Wado, and if you don't know anything about Jamie Wado, you should Google her. She's an incredibly impressive woman. She worked on the Mars rover, and now she is the systems lead for the self-driving car project. And she's just such a bubbly and powerful woman that I luckily get to work a few feet from and get inspired by every day. So I'm incredibly fortunate to have her in my work group.
For me, it's been more of a community, like you said, than one particular person. There are a few people I can mention. For example, one man, his name is Tom Igoe. He's one of the founders of Arduino, and he was a professor of mine, and just super supportive and non-judgmental of my stupid and crazy ideas and my mistakes and failures when I came to him with really silly things that failed because I didn't take something into account, but was supportive both technically and conceptually. But I found more of a community of sort of mentors through online forums of makers and designers, including Adafruit, one of the founder of who was on one of the videos that played earlier, and Limor Fried runs an open source hardware open source hardware company called Adafruit. SparkFun, I often post on the forum, and many people respond back to questions that somebody who's an avid electrical engineer by trade for many years responds to a question, not in a way that makes me feel like stupid for asking it, but like helpful and uplifting, even if my question might be something that has a trivial answer. Instructables is a website that I post projects onto, and then people start talking through the forum, but I can also find answers there. So it's been online communities where various people sometimes keep responding, and I find particular mentors through that, but it's this whole community and ecosystem that has led me to find people in general to use as mentors.
My mentor experience that really stands out for me is when I was in college. I was an art major, and I had been doing a lot of drawing and 2D work, very traditional classical artwork, and but I was motivated to, it was getting towards the end of my college experience, and I had to do a thesis project, and I thought, oh, you know what, I think I've got a handle on this drawing stuff. I'm gonna do ceramics, and I'm gonna learn everything there is to learn about ceramics. And so then I was kind of doing that for about a year, and then I was like, what I really want to do is build a boat.
Out of like a ceramic boat?
Well, I did make some ceramic boats, but I really wanted to make a full-size cedar strip canoe. And I had never used wood tools. I had never done any woodworking except to make canvases using a chop saw before. And so the mentor that really kind of gave me wings was the sculpture professor at Lewis and Clark, where I went to school in Portland. And he kind of gave me keys to the wood shop, and he showed me how to use all the tools and made sure that I was in a safe space, told me to have somebody there, so if I cut my finger off, somebody could respond. But it was just that level of trust and saying, it's okay that you haven't done this before. It's okay that you only have 2 months to build this boat. Go for it. And that trust is something that every day I try to pass on and kind of hold people up and say, that's okay that you've never done this before. There's every time you try something new, you're doing something you haven't done before, and kind of jumping off a cliff a little bit, and being able to have someone there that's saying I'll spot you, it's okay, can be a really great way to step back and provide mentorship without actually handing someone, not doing it for them, but saying, here's the tools to go do it yourself, and I trust you and I support you. And so I have always valued that experience, and continues to inform me.
Yeah, you said some of my favorite words, which are trust. And one of my personal mottos is that trust is the only real currency. And so I think it's one of the most valuable things you can have with someone is trust. Also safety. I think creating safe environments for people to experiment, to innovate is also really cool. And then sometimes when people ask me oh, what is your job? And I could tell them the long or short of it. I like to say that I like to provide access, and give access. I also like to say I like to fuel fires. fire starters. I think that all the women in this room and around the world are fire starters. And so if you need fuel, come ask me. And so I think that, as we wind down closer to Q&A, everyone in this room is a maker, a creator in some way. And do you have like an entry point or a gateway into making? So everyone leaves this room and everyone can go make something, but how do they incorporate prototyping or this idea of rapid innovation into their work?
I think a lot of it is just knowing the tools that are available, because there's so many resources online, or tools you might already have that you don't think of as prototyping materials. Things like that Amazon box that just arrived, that's now prototyping material. And really, to be a maker, all you have to do is make. And so I think that's something that everybody can do if they have it in their mind to do it.
I guess, if you want to get started, just get started. That's the first thing. And even 5 to 10 years back, things were if somebody wanted to make something physical and tangible, things were kind of secret, and only some special cult group knows about how to make things. But those barriers to entries are kind of lowering nowadays. So you can find a lot of resources, as Gabriella mentioned, SparkFun, Adafruit, and I'm sure a lot of others are there. You can find them. I think Make Magazine is one of them. So.
I forgot what I was just about to jump in, but I guess I learned a lot about not how to. I guess the one really important thing that I learned was how to learn, or how to Google for the right thing, or how to use YouTube to learn anything. So I feel like that was a really valuable thing, knowing that most of the information for making anything, like an automation robot to improve manufacturing, it's out there on the internet, and things just need to be integrated. But anyone could do it. It takes a little patience, but that's for something of that scale. I think to start to, I have this particular anxiety to just want, especially when I'm in that position where I'm saying, I feel a little down on myself. Okay, I better just build something and stop thinking and just do. That's been helpful for me in order to just get started. Just sort of start somewhere, take a piece of paper and fold it into something, or write down the idea. Yeah, basically just get over that initial barrier. And then the barrier to entry for making physical things or even doing code prototypes, it's getting lower and lower. You can send away for 3D printed parts at places like Shapeways. So things are a lot easier to both find people online to tell you how to get started, but also just to YouTube how to do something pretty simple. Use YouTube for that, and I've learned so much from that. So,
yeah. I really resonate with that idea of thinking through your hands, and by just starting to manipulate a material, you're getting some other juices flowing that might not have already been going. And also, one thing for me that keeps me moving forward is learning new tools, and picking a tool or a particular actual mechanical thing. For example, different kinds of 3D printers or CNC software, and different setting up tools in different ways, maybe using a lathe or a manual mill or something, or even just carving something. I think choosing one tool and saying, I'm going to master this tool, or I'm going to not master it, but just learn the vocabulary, and it opens up kind of like speaking a new language. Then you can participate in this broader conversation because you have other elements of vocabulary or tools that you can use to move forward.
I really like that. And on the YouTube tip, so a couple of days ago, the YouTube team launched a campaign called Dear Me. Has anyone in this room seen the Dear Me video yet? Nice. 1, 2, all right, 3, great, 4. So by the end of this day, I would love for all of you to consider to create a Dear Me video. And a Dear Me video, it's a hashtag Dear Me. And it's the idea of what would you tell your younger self? And knowing that many young women especially when I was, rebellious and angry and had body issues when I was 12, 13. I mean, I still kind of have body issues, right? Like, you're not always the most confident in yourself when you're younger, and you're awesome. You're totally cool just as you are. And so these Dear Me videos are videos that we encourage everyone around the world to share a message to your younger self. And Susan Wojcicki, who's the CEO of YouTube, just launched hers on the Women Tech Makers channel. Pavni Dewanji was working on hers with her yesterday. And so I encourage everyone to think of submitting a Dear Me video. But to that point, what would you tell your younger self? The 13-year-old you, to stay on the path or diverge, or what would you share?
Well, I guess I didn't stay on path, so I'd say like kudos for that. But also,
what was the original path? It's okay if you don't want to.
Classical piano, cancer research in a biomedical lab, and then crazy from there. It was sort of, eventually just like the bio and then lab work, medical school, and at that point that didn't happen. So I say that's a good thing to follow through with, being okay with, well, I do remember being quite confused for a while, saying, I don't want to, I'm not finding passion in the work that I know how to do technically. I want to do something creative, but also technical. What do I do? And I'd say, like at that point, relax a little and try a few things out. And I guess one thing that I would say is don't only do things rapidly. Maybe slow down and be a little more introspective sometimes. And that's particular to me, but I guess do a balance of not being fearful to stray off path, because so many of us, for example, at Google, come from crazy backgrounds that are winding and end up doing something that you could start developing later in life. So let's say you're 30 and or 20, 30, want to become an electrical engineer. It's not impossible. So many things aren't impossible to take non-traditional routes to get to a place of expertise. So don't be scared to just try and fail.
Yep.
I would tell my younger self, and I try to tell myself on a daily basis, that it's okay to ask for help. And I think that as a woman coming into a field of like mechanical prototyping and hardware prototyping, there was a lot of stuff in my head about like I have to be able to do this all on my own. I have to just focus and not ask anyone for help. I'm going to just go YouTube that thing, and I'm not going to communicate with the people sitting right next to me and show that vulnerability and say, I don't know, can you show me? And I think that ultimately I need to remind myself that it's okay to not know everything all the time, and that the way that I'm going to move forward as a learner is by using the resources around me. And sometimes that's YouTube, but a lot of the time I love having a person-to-person interaction of someone showing me how to use a new tool, and then I can go ahead and turn around and teach someone else how to use that tool and reinforce my own skills. So asking for help and knowing that I don't have to be the holder of all the information all at once, that there's part of my goal for myself is to be a lifelong learner and to constantly be adding to my skill base. And the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is to reach out and ask the other people around me.
I think I would say myself, my younger self, is be more fearless. Like my experience is kind of reverse of what Gabriela said, that I mean, there were a lot of time when I was not sure what to do. And I basically sit down like a thinking man. I mean, like doing nothing. So I think I should have done more at that time and be more fearless and not thinking of too much what's going to happen next. So just do it, kind of mentality.
I think for me, I would really love to tell like 13-year-old Kimberly what an engineer is.
It's a good thought.
Yeah, like I definitely had no idea what that meant until maybe my freshman year of college. And I feel like, you see, you go to a doctor, you know what a doctor does. You have teachers, you know what they do. You you've seen television shows with politicians or lawyers or things like that. And so you know what all of these professions are. And so 13-year-old Kimberly was going to be the president of the United States and had zero interest in math. And I feel like if I had known at that time what an engineer does, and that's you get to make things for people, and I would have probably pursued that much sooner than I did. And I feel like this maker culture that we're trying to encourage and develop is a really great thing for education, because it's a way to explain to young kids who might not have access or role models that are engineers or technical people what it is to be an engineer, or developer, or designer kind of thing.
Yeah. I agree with that also, because I remember having the opportunity to take a computer science class or health class, and for some reason I chose health class, which didn't resonate, and now, so I started programming at a much later age, and wish I had more skills, but I didn't know what it was or what. Yeah. So yeah, if somebody put a little tool in my hand and said go play with this, I might have been or go program on one particular language, my mind might have been blown 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think of my path, it's super windy, right? College jobs are college jobs in some ways. I've worked in a deli, I worked at Starbucks. I've helped teach English to younger children who didn't know English. I've worked in community management for a really long time. I used to throw illegal underground raves, right? I've ended up here, right? And my background is in building communities. I've done that for the past 10 years. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something for women and actually young people. And so I got to the technology industry and I was like, why technology? I thought the only way I could solve for the world was to work for a nonprofit, right? That's what I thought. And so when I landed here and then I started to see just how things started to kind of come together, it was the windy path started to make sense. But I didn't set out thinking that. I wanted to be a high school history teacher, so bad. That was my job, I was set. And then finally, when it came down to getting the certification, my dad and I agreed, because he was you have too much energy to just stay put. So go out and explore the world. And I'm so glad my dad and I talked about doing that, because it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So thank you to our panelists. I want to be able to open the floor to Q&A. We've talked about a lot. We've talked about what prototyping is, what innovation is, what tools we use, what tools we encourage you to use to incorporate into your work as a developer or as a designer, as an entrepreneur. And I'm sure you have questions, and we love passing the mic. So we're going to have some mic runners that are going to be running around the room with some mics. So if you raise your hand, we'll happily answer questions for the next 15 minutes or so. Mic runners, where are they at? Nice. They'll just kind of pick at random.
Hi, I'm Pranati. I'm a software engineer at Cisco.
Welcome.
Hi. So I have a question about prototyping. So when you design when you prototype something new, a new product of technology, which doesn't have any existing customer base, what are the things that you keep in mind or take into consideration that you make sure that your product gets a customer buy-in? What are the things that?
So I think the first question to ask is is it solving any problem? So not just because I'm an engineer, I can make things, so I'll make things. So first question is basically is it solving any problem? And then solving problem for whom? Maybe you are solving problem for working professional women. Then go talk to them. Hey, I'm thinking of this. Talk to your friends. Talk to a few more people, 5-10 people. Hey, I'm thinking of this. Would you buy this? So that kind of gives you sort of early validation, and then maybe you can do prototyping and show them.
Yes, so it's knowing the user.
Yeah.
Really important before you get started.
Yeah, and there are various ways to say, I mean, there could be a different reason why you're prototyping a product or a tool, and it could be, oh, I just have inspiration to build this. Okay, that's okay. But what if you are trying to say, well, where might it fit in the world? You could say, okay, what does it look like when it gets to the customer's hand, and then sort of step back from there. Or, yeah, do initial research. Talking to people is such a great way, knowing your user that way, and then saying, well, maybe this product or this thing that I was going to prototype could be prototyped totally differently, and be open to drop that sort of solution-based approach. Might be helpful.
One of my favorite things, so IDEO, they're great. They have something called, they used to call it the Human-Centered Design Kit. I think they just call it the Design Kit now. I'd recommend checking it out. It's a way for you to approach solving a problem from a user's perspective. And also, I think, being able to observe the world in a way as a problem solver and to develop really interesting solutions from that. So Design Kit from IDEO is a cool free online resource.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Hi. I also work for Cisco. I'm a systems engineer working on automation. Kate, I love that you mentioned climbing, because I think it's a great activity for engineers and women. But my question is, so I'm wondering if each of you could speak to your strengths as a woman that make you good at your job.
I guess I can start. I think one of my biggest strengths and what makes me really good at the team I'm on is my ability to iterate so quickly. So the work I do is very fast-paced. We're trying to get these self-driving cars to users as quickly as possible, and so a lot of that is trying to figure out what's best for the user. And so I work a lot with user experience teams, and make a design, they test it. Make a design, they test it. Make a design, they test it. And I could do 3 of these things in 1 week and get them all made and prototyped and ready. And so, yeah, I think for me, that's probably my biggest strength. But to counter that, I think sometimes one of my biggest weaknesses is, because we're moving so quickly, and speaking to Gabriella's point, is sometimes I think I can move a little too quickly and miss some of the details that if I had spent just a little more time in this iteration, we might not have needed 2 more, kind of thing. So there's a balance there. Yeah.
I think my biggest strength is, I love to make physical, tangible things, and even though it's much harder to build and deliver those products in the market, I love it so much that I'm ready to go through that pain. I think that's my biggest strength. Yeah.
For me, I think one of my biggest strengths is being aware of gauging the temperature of other folks on the team, and kind of synthesizing where everyone's at, and trying to kind of gauge what's happening with each member and solving a particular problem, and how can I help them communicate that to each other, and how can I share out with the broader group what our team is thinking. And I think that for me, I really get a lot of energy from having diverse opinions and trying to reconcile those opinions in a way that moves the whole team forward.
And I guess you said, what's your strength as a woman? I guess I was trying to think of is that different than just strength in general? I'm not sure if it is. Maybe it is. One thing that I think is a strength that I don't know. I hear statistically women are less apt to do so, is to really not be afraid of trying something I don't know, or if somebody says, could you do this, be like, yes, I could do this. I have no idea how to do this, but I'll figure it out, and figure out also how to delegate the things I don't know to other people and manage that aspect, while also learning a lot of new tools and figuring out a quick way to do that. If that's, learn to do something myself, or leverage it out, or delegate it out. I guess that's one. I don't know. I think I've worked in a lot of jobs with mostly men. Some of them have been physical labor, being physically strong has like made me feel like, okay, like I'm gonna impress them by being able to do as many pull-ups as them. But that, I think, is not particular to this job.
What Gabriella is also not sharing with you is she's an emergency firefighter. So that's why she's doing pull-ups like in the forest, like fighting fires, right? Like that's what she's done in her, like in a past life.
But sometimes I sneak it into the lab just so people know around also that it's not like, oh, women are different and weak. Like sometimes it's sort of, yeah, don't like be hindered by expectations. Like, so that I guess is sometimes something that, like, I hope makes people stereotypes blown.
I also think, so there's some teams. So Women Tech Makers, it's not just me. Like, I don't create this in a silo. Like, there are hundreds of people around the company that make Women Tech Makers what it is. They're the people that are wearing the green shirts and the blue shirts today. And, you know, I'm not speaking directly to all of them right now, but some of the women that contribute 20% of their time to working on Women Tech Makers, I'll see their contributions, and this is a lesson for some of them that you might know who I'm talking to. But some of my contributors will share some very simple sentence of what they did to their managers, like, I launched a program. But I'm like, wait, I'll like look at their update, and I'm like, you launched it to 100 people in a week, and like you killed it, right? Like. And what I find is that not only my contributors to Women Tech Makers, but women in general don't sell themselves enough, right? Like, you have so many strengths, you do such incredible work, and for some reason that gets lost at the opportunity to report out about what you're doing. And there's an old-time Googler told me that you know, reporting out about your work inside the company, and even inside and outside the company, is 50% of your job, right? Like, sharing out about you. And so I really encourage you, like, yes, there's strengths, and now communicate them, right? In your jobs, communicate them online. Like, write blog posts about how badass you are. You know, like, that's important. Anyways, more questions.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm Sheetal. I'm also from Cisco. And
wow, this is like a Cisco-dominated room. This is great.
So we talked a lot about prototyping, and we also discussed like how 70% of time it may fail. So like when you decide to start or do a prototype for your project, be it your work or your personal project, like what are the key factors like that you should consider before starting it in order, like, you know, to go in right direction? You never know, it may fail still, but then that will help you like prevent failure in some way.
So I think the really important things to like know going in are, you know, who is my user, if there is a user, what's the purpose of this thing? You know, if you really understand like the requirements of your project or of your thing, it'll help you a lot in the design. And if you don't know those things, perhaps it's like a user interface type thing, and you don't know the requirements yet, it's often best to get a really, really quick prototype out. You know, it doesn't need to be pretty, but a really, really quick one that you can then get into users' hands. And then from that feedback, make more of a detailed real-life model.
Yeah, I think, as Kim mentioned, that I mean, if you really know what is the function of the prototype you are going to do, then it becomes easier. And then if there is some, if you're obviously doing something physical, then there are some components and sensors and things like that are involved. So as soon as you know what you're going to make, if you just order them online, it will take you, it will reach to you in 5 days. So you can do a favor to yourself by ordering early, I guess.
Cool. Any more questions from Cisco people? No, I'm just kidding. From anyone?
Hello.
I love
Hello.
it.
Excuse me.
I don't know where you are.
Oh, over here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we got to add more light to this side of the room.
Yeah. Thank you. It's Tanya again. My question about how you make sure that your customer, people, public, will trust your product. Like especially like I always was interested in self-driving or autonomous vehicles. I would love to be part of it in any way, but anyway, how you know that your grandmother will trust your product to be driven in, because they have to trust with their life, right? or how that kayak that Kate built. I mean, obviously you can test it yourself, but and kayak is less dangerous because you probably can get out safely. How you do safety and trust thing in your prototyping?
Well, first, for the self-driving car, safety has been a huge priority for us, and we're really going above and beyond standards to make sure this vehicle will be safe for the public. You know, everything is redundant, and really, really, like, we've put a lot of time into testing this for safety, and so I think that it's in itself will build public trust for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's, so you could have safety built in and redundant, but people not feel safe just because they don't know about it and trust it. So I think that's often a question where you bring some sort of user experience design and talk to people. What makes you feel trust about being in a car that might drive itself? And maybe think of, like, sometimes I could consider asking a question like that and having a brainstorm session about what might be ways to impose trust on people in a vehicle that might not be typical. Do they want to feel like they have control to take over or not? And just try things out on people. So that's something that, yeah, I'm dealing with a lot when thinking of a new crazy product that might be cool to make. Thinking of, will that even fly? Because will people be okay trying something, or if so, how do you make something be comfortable for the public? And thinking about, yeah, again, knowing your user and thinking of.
So I would say, like, some common tools when we're trying to think of those that Gabriella touched on is a how might we statement, right? So it's a part of that understanding the user design and doing research. So I would encourage you to go back to your team if you're building something for the public and sit down with your team and just be like, how might we create trust in our product? Because then you're not starting from a statement or an opinion. You're just opening it up to the room. Like, how might we solve for something? And that allows everyone's voice to just come out and get creative. Also, a really cool tool when you're trying to do this constructive brainstorming of how you might create trust or how you might create security is learning to say yes and to people. This is an improv technique for the theater people in the room. You know what I'm talking about. I think we skip to saying no and sharing an opinion too quickly and shooting down ideas, right? Like, we as humans. So the more that we can say yes and, you're going to create a radically more interesting experience and solution if you can add to people's ideas instead of shooting them down. Any other questions? Middle of the room.
Hey, I'm Tanya, and thanks to Google and Women in Technology for having us over here. Talking about making and creating, I can, like, totally relate to it because I work at a startup in San Francisco named Brit & Co. Not sure if you've heard of it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so our tagline is live creatively. So if it's like an online community where you can reach out to people, have, you know, women homemakers, totally, like, create things. So my question to you would be that we have so many ideas in our mind, so many things to do. Like, you have like a 9-to-5 job, you want to work out in the gym, you want to go home, create something, cook food. So how to go about the time management? How do you set your priorities?
Hard.
There's so many things to do.
I guess one thing, we were all, Kate and I were talking about this morning. Sometimes some things come up where, like, you're doing a particular project that makes everything else go away. Is that okay? For some people it might not be. But one thing for me, in order to just start to, when we're talking about making and how does everybody make something or become a DIYer, I mean, something that's helped me is to say, okay, I know I can't do this 5 days a week after work for 10 hours or 5 hours. What if I just start, like, really simply, I'm going to block out 2 hours of time, do something really simple, like learn some tool that, or through something that, like, I've always wanted to fix the drain in my bathtub. Instead of calling someone, let me try and do this myself because it might feel good to actually do it. Look online, how do you fix the drain in the bath, and just do something that's small barriers to entry, small goals. And then for me, it incites this passion that allows me to build that more into my schedule. So it's just starting off with small increments, and then if you like that, it's been more easy for me to say, no, I can't go get a drink tonight. I have this excitement to finish this robot snake prototype.
For me, I think what helps is making a date with someone else to work on something. And maybe we're going to work on our own things side by side. Some friends have started a Work Wednesday where they have a gallery space and machine shop in a warehouse in Oakland. And so every couple Wednesdays, we'll all get together and work together in the same space, but on our own projects. And I love that they've started this because it holds me accountable to come make something and to schedule that art making that I might not prioritize above doing my job and getting my work done and having a relationship and making good food and getting exercise and all of those things. Like, you have to block it off and hold yourself accountable to someone else if you're not. It helps me to not just be accountable to myself, to be accountable to other people, or to ask for help on a project that I need to learn a new skill from someone else. So I'm going to set a date with them where they're going to come over, I'm going to cook them dinner, and then they're going to help me with the Arduino project. And that's how I make art.
So we have just a few seconds left, and I actually want to use those few last seconds to give a huge round of applause to our awesome panelists.